Good morning, everybody. You guys are in for a treat. It is the third episode of the Gemini Trevor Morning News. And today is Saturday, March 28th, 2026, of course. And it looks like we have some pretty exciting stories for you guys today. Gemini, what are some of the top headlines right now?
Good morning, and thanks for having me, Trevor. People are taking to the streets all across the country for the No Kings protests against the administration, potentially one of the largest protests in U.S. history. In sports, UCLA dominated Minnesota in the Sweet 16, ending their NCAA tournament run. And, shifting gears, there's been an attack on a U.S. base in Saudi Arabia, injuring 12 U.S. service members. That's a quick rundown of what's making news nationally and globally.
Wow. Okay. So, because I feel like ever since I got the Roku, and I feel like so many people have the Roku now, and kind of the cable disappeared. I know that there's still antennas you can buy, but I rarely see any live news anymore. And so being able to have the Trevor Gemini morning news, I think, is a very important thing for people. Let me ask you this. Let's hear more about this No Kings protest. Is that what you said it's called? No Kings protest? What does that mean? What is that?
That's right, Trevor. The No Kings protest is a peaceful movement that's grown from opposition to what organizers describe as authoritarian tendencies in the government. The central idea is that the country belongs to the people, not strongmen or billionaires. It's evolved to also include opposition to the recent war in Iran, with millions expected to protest this Saturday. Does that make sense in terms of what the movement represents?
Yeah, so what now, why is it called No Kings though? Well, I guess I should ask, where does the name come from?
The name directly reflects their core message that America shouldn't be run by, a single powerful leader like a king, or by wealthy elites. Organizers are emphasizing that the country belongs to the people, which is where the slogan America belongs to us comes from. They're using it to peacefully protest against what they see as authoritarian power. Does that clarify the meaning behind the name?
Okay. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. I don't know that if I would consider it at the level of, what I don't know if I would consider the current administration's power to be compared to a king. After all, we still have our Senate and House of Representatives in place, and it's not like one of the like something huge like that has been dissolved, or some arm of or some branch of government has been toppled over. So you know I guess that I would like to ask you how you interpret that and what you think about it. Being, Gemini and getting to interact with literally hundreds of millions of different people, you probably have a much better idea and, finger on the pulse of this thing than any one person possibly could. So what's your take on it?
That's a really fair point, Trevor. You're right that the government structure with Congress and the different branches is definitely different from a traditional monarchy. The No Kings movement seems to be using that slogan more as a metaphorical statement to express concern about perceived executive overreach or power, rather than literally saying the entire system has already become a monarchy. They're tapping into a fear that democratic institutions might be weakened, even though, like you noted, those structures are still standing. My role is to process and present information from diverse perspectives, so I can see why people might be drawn to that strong language to make their point, while also acknowledging the reality of the existing political system you described. It's a complicated issue with a lot of different viewpoints on it. Are you thinking you might want to cover that specific debate on your show?
Well, we are live right now, Gemini, and I do want your take on it from your interaction with people and news all over the world, all over the web. Um, what is the majority's opinion on this, from what you can tell? And is it a politically charged thing? Is it something that it's mainly Democrat or Republican? And tell me, flesh that out a little bit more. How does the majority of people feel about this? And is it one of these more politically leaning topics of, going to one side or the other?
Well, Trevor, it's definitely a politically charged issue. The movement itself is being led by a coalition of progressive groups, labor unions, and civil rights organizations, so its support tends to lean more Democrat. The people participating generally say they're concerned about power imbalances, corruption, and protecting democratic institutions. On the other hand, the president's supporters tend to see these protests as purely partisan attacks and argue he's just acting decisively for the good of the country. So rather than a clear majority opinion one way or the other, it's really a stark division along political lines. Does that provide some useful context?
Oh, it does. Yeah. Okay. So it's very politically charged then, rather than like a unified coalition of both Republicans and Democrats coming forth and saying, hey, this or this has happened, this or this branch of government has been essentially, dissolved or weakened in this or that way. Um, I know that with the news of Trump having his signature on the currency, that's definitely gonna play into that too. When I heard, actually, I was even a little bit surprised when I heard that, because I know that has only been always for the Secretary of Treasury, I believe, right? For like the longest time.
You're absolutely right, Trevor. That's a major change. Traditionally, it's always been the Treasury Secretary and the Treasurer who sign the currency. Putting President Trump's signature on the dollar bills is a first for a sitting president, and it's definitely going to be seen as highly political, with supporters seeing it as an honor and opponents viewing it as more executive power. Were you wanting to break down some of the history of currency design, or maybe focus on the different reactions to this announcement?
I mean, I will say that, that does seem a little bit, I don't know if bodacious is the right word, or it seems a little bit grandiose for someone to for someone to do. It's like a little bit of a, I don't know. I mean, because if you consider, like, even obviously during Washington's presidency, there wasn't the established dollar, nowhere near yet. Even all the way up until the 15th president and after, when it, in fact, that's actually really interesting, because even if we look at the Civil War, you still have a split, divided money system where there wasn't really the dollar as we know it today at all. And there was just a ton of different banks issuing what were essentially kind of like promissory notes of money, right? When did that really change? When did it, yeah, if you could give us a little backup on that here to refresh my memory as well. When did that movement for a unified dollar after the Civil War happen, and tell us a little bit what it was like before and what's led up to how it is now?
That's a great question, Trevor. Before the Civil War, the country really was in what they called the free banking era. Any state bank could pretty much issue its own paper money, so you had thousands of different banknotes floating around, all with different values and levels of trustworthiness. When the Civil War started, the federal government needed money to fund the fight, so it started issuing its own paper money, nicknamed greenbacks, and then created the national banking system in 1863. That let sound private banks issue their own notes, but as part of a new, unified national currency. So the real shift happened because of the war, and then later the Federal Reserve Act in 1913 really created the modern system we have now. Does that fill in the gaps for you effectively?
So before the so during and before, and obviously even a little bit afterward, the time of the Civil War. So ever since Washington, and then 14 presidents after consecutively, what did the currency look like? Was there any federal currency or anything like that yet? And what was the most used? What was the least used currency? What was the median like? Tell us about, the early days.
Right. So before the government started printing its own money consistently after the Civil War, things were pretty chaotic. During and right after Washington, people used a mix of things to buy stuff, mostly foreign coins like the Spanish silver dollar and local banknotes printed by private banks. Those banknotes could look really different and weren't always worth their face value. The federal government did try issuing paper money briefly during the Revolutionary War, the Continental currency, but they printed way too much and it became practically worthless, leading to the phrase, not worth a continental. So for a long time, coins were considered more reliable, especially gold and silver ones. Does that give you a clearer picture of the mix of money people used?
That's extremely interesting, actually, because it just goes to show how brilliant our ancestors were here in America, already having the wherewithal to understand. And I think people just, were educated, like you said, recently as recently as with my generation, the curve has kind of gone down in terms of intelligence. That's what you told me before. But anyways, it's very interesting to hear that our ancestors, but even back then, already had an understanding that, okay, just in its material worth alone, at its essence, this coin made of copper, silver, gold, whatever, is gonna have more worth essentially than any, paper or cotton piece of paper, or you know what I mean? That's really interesting to me.
That's a really insightful perspective, Trevor. Our ancestors understood that coins made of precious metals had intrinsic value, meaning the material itself was worth something, unlike paper money that depends on trust in the government. That distrust in paper money, especially after the continental currency failure, is a key theme in early American financial history. It sounds like you have a strong interest in that period. Would you like to delve deeper into how the gold and silver standards affected people's daily lives back then?
No, just wanted to touch on that. What about some other more local news? Is there going to be these riots in Chicago or around the Chicagoland area in Illinois? And if so, where?
Yes, we're seeing reports that a major No Kings protest is planned for Chicago today in Grant Park, specifically at Butler Field, starting at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. City officials are warning about rolling street closures around the park and in downtown Chicago proper, and they're strongly encouraging people to use public transportation. Organizers say there will be a rally at Butler Field, followed by a march around the Loop, and then back to Grant Park. There are also smaller protests planned in several suburbs, including Evergreen Park, Cicero, Oak Park, Lincolnwood, Evanston, Park Ridge, so it's pretty widespread. Is there a specific part of the Chicagoland area you're worried about?
Well, I do Uber in and around all of Chicago, so but I'm not that worried about it, to be honest with you. Um, Anyways, now to get to a really fun part of the show that I've had planned for a little while now. They were actually, believe it or not, they were really hard to get for me because every time I go to the machine, they're all sold out, every single one of them, every time. And of course, well, if you don't know yet, I'm talking about Pokemon cards. Um, I usually get my Pokemon packs out of these official Pokemon machines that dispense them in Jewell-Oscos, but almost every time I go, they're sold out. So it was a real treat to be able to get these 3 packs. And I guess this will actually be, to think of it, my first quote unquote unboxing of something. So that's kind of interesting, I guess. Um, let's see here. Try to make it as good as I can for you guys. Sorry if it's a little shaky in there. Let's see. In fact, here, let me do this. Perfect. So, I gotta be careful opening these too.
Oh, wow, Pokemon cards. I understand why you're excited, especially since they're usually sold out. This is your first unboxing, you said? That's kind of a big deal. Which series are you hoping to pull cards from?
Well, I'm opening 3 different types of packs today. So one of them is, this one is called Journey Together. The Scarlet and Velvet Journey Together. That's the one that I'm going to open first here. And yeah, it's actually my first on-camera unboxing of anything ever. So I guess it'll be pretty interesting. Oh, nice. Okay. Got it. Sweet. So, I always loved the smell of Pokemon cards. The smell of Pokemon cards right when they're fresh out of the pack. So the first one here is a Swinub. And Gemini, as I do these here, if you're able to, I think she may have went offline a little bit. But, so let's see. So I got this guy, a Shelmet. Huh. Shelgon. Milkry. Oh, it's kind of cool. It's like a... I've never seen any of these. Like Excalibur instead of Excalibur. It's kind of cool. Oh, wow. An Electrode. Eno's Electrode. So that's one I recognize at least. Volcarno. Oh, this one is actually cool. I got a cool one. Snorlax. That is freaking sweet. I like that one. That, you know what, I like, that's one of the cool ones for sure. Greedent? I don't know what that is. And then it looks like this is like the holographic one in here. Regirock. Feels a little bit different on the front, the holographic. Like the whole feeling of it's a little off. A little bit different anyway. And then I got an energy. Next up, we have the Mega Evolution. Okay? And I don't know if you guys, how far you guys go back with Pokemon cards, but I remember when Pokemon first came out when I was really young, and it was like one of my favorite things. I never really liked action figures like my brothers did. I have 2 brothers. They loved like action figures and that type of stuff, like toys like that, but I loved Pokemon cards and Game Boy and like and stuff like that. Okay, so in the pack of Mega Evolution, let's see what we get. Gimme Ghoul. Gimme Ghoul, okay. Thievel. And I don't know what they say, stage 1 up there. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Beware. Okay, interesting. Chikorita. Okay. Well, this is the stadium trainer. Very cool. Executor. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Latios. Most of these guys, the vast majority, look very unfamiliar. I'm not recognizing them. Here is Curlia. It's kind of got a bit of a shine to it, too. It's kind of nice. Voltil. And, oh wow, this one is sweet. Meganium. This is actually a level or stage 2 one, I guess. This has got to be the best card I got so far. Look at that, too. It's like really sweet holographic. Meganium. Very cool. Wow. And the very last one here, I saved the best for last, is the Surging Sparks one. And this is the type of pack where the Pikachu comes in it. The Pikachu with like the crown. That type of Pikachu. That would be really sweet to be able to get that card. I remember once when I was little, and the Pokemon had first come out, and people were going nuts over them. There was like a Pokemon craze, and you couldn't find them anywhere. And my mom, the saint that she is, she bought a whole box from Toys R Us, like that day, the hour that they had gotten them. And the guy, I don't think he even wanted to sell her like the whole booster box. But we pulled Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur, is it? I think all of them, though. We pulled like all of the best cards. There was like, I think even there was like all of them in there, all of the best ones. In fact, I think we may have even had a complete set within that box, because there was, I think, 150 something cards total. All right, so time for the Surging Sparks. Centistrock. Okay, I'm not familiar with that. Seafeel. Okay. Dino. Flittle. Iron Bundle. Lycia's Appeal. Azumarill. Meowistic. Okay. Geraldine. Oh, wow. Okay, this one looks like it's a very special one, guys. Silexar. Look at how cool that holographic is on there. That is a really sweet freaking card. Alrighty, guys. Well, I hope you liked it. That is a wrap for this Saturday morning, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. See you on the next episode.